Greetings viewers and welcome back to the review program. In this episode we will talk about the economic shifts and figures of Uzbekistan throughout the 2023, inflation and the future economical aspects of the country. As the global economic landscape continues to evolve, Uzbekistan finds itself grappling with the complex issue of inflation in 2023. The country's economic figures for the year paint a nuanced picture marked by the series of challenges that have ended to rising prices, particularly during the winter season. We have talked to the residents of Tashkent in regards to that, the changes of the prices and their expenditures per month.
Я пенсионерка вообще сама.
I'm retiree. For retirees here in terms of food products, there is a big shortage. The pension is small. In addition to food, we also pay for an apartment, utilities, and this money is barely enough.
Недавно было постановление, что...
Recently, a decree was signed to increase the pension. Did you feel the difference?
Нет.
No, everything is expensive everywhere. Food is very expensive. Meat, for example, costs almost 100,000 sums. That is why half of the money is already spent on buying food. I have recently arrived and noticed that prices in the capital have risen very much, for services especially. For example, the subway. Last year it was cheaper. In supermarket, the prices for the most necessary food products have increased significantly. In general, I didn't feel the rise in food prices much. I noticed a strong increase in gasoline prices because I drive a car. Because of this, sometimes I have to take a taxi. And at such times, I have noticed how the prices for cab services have risen.
Albatta, bizda faqat narx oshadi.
Prices always go up, but wages don't go up accordingly. Prices rise gradually and many people do not notice this increase.
В основном это касается бензина.
Mostly the price increase is very noticeable for gasoline. Food prices are also noticeably rising. For example, I spend from 300 to 400,000 sums a week.
Uzbekistan's economy grew by 5.8% over the past 9 months of this year. Exports increased by 23.5% and made up $17.7 billion. Due to the implementation of large-scale industrial and infrastructure projects in economic sectors and regions, 226.6 trillion sums of investments were mastered, up by 11.8% compared to the same period of last year. By the end of the year, GDP growth is expected to be 5.6%. Now, what is the situation with Uzbekistan's economy? What are the drivers of the inflation in the country and what is the future of this industry? To answer all these questions, we have invited a special guest from ADB, the expert in economies, to discuss all these aspects. Good evening, Mr. Bigzo. Thank you so much for dedicating your time for this interview. We're really glad to have you in our studio today.
Good evening. Thank you very much for hosting me.
Let's start off with the basics. What is the current situation with the economy in Uzbekistan, and could you particularly reflect on the inflationary trends and what are the main factors that affect the price rises in Uzbekistan?
So in terms of economic performance, Uzbekistan is performing well relatively to other countries in the region. So Uzbekistan for the first half of this year achieved more than 5.5%, like close to 6% growth. And also inflation, although it still remains high, but there's a deceleration of inflation, i.e., slowing down the price hikes for the year. And we expect that, till the end of this year, the inflation will be around like 10% max. We're talking about end of period inflation. And the growth rate in economic expansion will be continuing. So most probably it will be around 5.5% for the year.
How do you vision the upcoming winter season? Will there be any specific areas in the economy that may affect most?
In winter, we have some seasonal price hikes for vegetable, fruits, and etc. So that will reflect in the increase of prices for food. Essentially, food itself plays an important role in the overall basket, or we call it consumer basket index of household consumption. We expect that during the winter that certain price hikes for the foodstuff will remain. till December, till the end of December. And also in terms of services, and also we call it non-food products or services, such as transportation, education, etc. That will have some lagged impact from the increase of energy prices that the government of Uzbekistan declared for the enterprises in the beginning of October, and also some price differentiations for the households' energy consumption starting from November. So this energy price hike will have so-called cost-pushing inflation in the economy, but that requires some time so that we need to wait to see the reflection of this price hike in energy on other goods and services.
What are the main drivers of the inflation?
So in Uzbekistan, the main driver, once again, mentioning about this tariff policy. So since Uzbekistan is pushing the structural reforms, which is necessary to transition to a market economy. So structural reforms in a simple language means adjusting the prices for energy price, also for public transportation, etc., so that the production or delivering of those services and products to the population and firms, will be at the level of, for the enterprises, at the level of at least a cost recovery level. That means whatever they invest and spend money and capital to produce these services and products or commodities, they should cover the cost of it. This is essential because if the government does not pursue the price adjustments in the energy sector, that will not be healthy in terms of financial sustainability or longer-term survival of the state-owned enterprises or the whole industry itself. Besides Uzbekistan, other countries, they went through this process. And this is usual if we compare to the other transition countries in CIS, as well as in Asian countries. And hopefully, if they will pursue further reforms and accelerate this price adjustments, by 2026 or so, we will have at least single-digit inflation in the economy.
And how are the global economic shifts expected to influence the inflation in Uzbekistan?
So we have, back in 2022, we had so-called exogenous shocks, right? Stemming from, first of all, some geopolitical conflict between countries. And that adversely impacted the supply of goods and services, especially food commodities, like grain, and also like potatoes and etc. And this increased the prices worldwide. And that was right after the start of the conflict. And it was also after the COVID pandemic. The COVID pandemic itself, it was the first wave of exogenous shock that increased the transportation costs as well as the overall cost of the commodities in the market, in the world market. And this cost, so-called imported cost, we saw last year in 2022 in Uzbekistan's consumer basket index. And starting from almost like March, April or so of this year, we see the trajectory in the world market in terms of prices for commodities downward. So that means the high inflation that Uzbekistan imports for foodstuff and other inputs for the production of enterprises and also for the households' consumption, it will accelerate the inflation that Uzbekistan has been importing. So that means most probably this trend will continue. That's our expectation, as well as other international financial institutions' projection. So as long as geopolitical conflicts, their adverse impact on the world prices will remain more or less stable. In other words, there will be less fluctuations and let's say sparks in the conflicts in certain regions.
Mm-hmm. What is the role of international organizations in this process?
Well, international organizations, first of all, we have been pushing the structural reforms or advocating to ensure that the overall economy becomes sustainable because we know that since Uzbekistan is going through the transition to a market economy, at the same time, Uzbekistan has a large role of state-owned enterprises in its economy. And those state-owned enterprises, they're major producers of energy. We're talking about natural gas, electricity, etc. And also within the transportation industry itself, the state role is very important. In that sense, what we have been, basically all IFIs and development partners, we have been advocating to authorities here in Uzbekistan is to speed up the structural reforms. Once again, structural reforms means not only increasing prices or just to cover the cost of the production and supply of those commodity or services and goods, but also transformation of those state-owned enterprises. Transformation means making their financial management and reporting consistent with international standards. And also to ensure that all those state-owned enterprises, they will have less dependence on Ministry of Finance, or today Ministry of Economy and Finance, so that they will have less subsidy receiving from the state budget, i.e. from taxpayers' money. Instead, they will reform themselves inside, and then they will try to have an access to international capital markets so that they can sell their securities, their bonds, and other equity similar to bonds, the other securities, so that they can raise capital for themselves and then expand their business and further lower the price of their commodities and services that they provide because of the higher productivity in their production.
Actually, talking about this society, if you don't mind, I have a personal questions. Like the residents of Tashkent, they say that it became really expensive. For example, they say that tourists come here and they say it's really cheap, but in comparison to the local residents, they say it's really expensive, especially in the capital. Do you think this trend will continue, or there will be a certain point where the prices will just lower down?
Yeah, well, the prices in the capital city, which is urban, which is expanding drastically. We call this like a rapid urbanization. It is not only in Tashkent. If you go to Samarkand or Urgench or Bukhara or Navoiy, you see this rapid expansion of constructions, right? For example, the business, like we call them cities, right? i.e. business centers or downtowns, as well as residential houses. This is the typical trend where a developing country is taking off in terms of growth. And this growth here in Uzbekistan is based on the investments in capital assets, i.e. infrastructure like roads, houses, and etc. And also expansion of industrial capacity of firms. So, for example, we know some firms, they just import a lot of equipment, modern equipment, so that they can invest in their production line to expand and then enlarge the employment of more employees. And the overall objective is to reach that level that they start exporting and beyond domestic market, i.e. Uzbek market. And for this trend requires more employees coming from different provinces as well. China went through this experience, and other countries in Asia. Uzbekistan is entering or has entered already this stage of development, which is okay. So people certainly, when you have more densely populated urban areas, that's a huge market, right, for the enterprises, and also that also triggers demand increase for food, for services, and etc. And then the prices, of course, they also push the prices up. But on average, if you go to get the average inflation or price levels taken into account the prices in rural areas, then it's of course much lower. The prices are much lower than or cost of living is much lower than cost of living in rural areas. So yes, in capital city in Tashkent, the prices and the inflation will seem to people very high. Actually, they are high. However, the one remedy to avoid this, or at least to reduce this high inflation, would be to increase the productivity of labor. i.e., if as an employee, if I produce, let's say, 1 unit of some, let's say, book, right? I work for a publishing house, and in terms of increasing my productivity, right? Then let's say next year I start producing 2 books, and that means I'm becoming more productive. The problem here is if enterprises and also this, the government, not government, but public policies to boost the capital, human capital, or to develop the human capital, including education, skills development, innovation and research and development, right? If they don't invest in those areas of economy, it will not it will not improve the productivity of labor. So, however, if there's no productive labor, although the wages are going up and up, and that means what? That means we have fewer commodities and goods and services in the market, while we are potential to spend more money to buy those commodities, or i.e. our demand will also go up. That's a problem. That leads to higher inflation. Actually, this leads also, some, we call it protracted or stuck high prices for those goods and services. So once again, one remedy would be to focus on human capital development, i.e. overall productivity, and also technology into the production.
What is ADB's overlook on the future of the Uzbekistan's economy and the inflation?
Well, our projection for the next year and actually for the medium term projection, we expect that the economic growth will be around 5.5%. So, well, to the public, if we say all those numbers, it doesn't make much difference, and also it would be a bit difficult for them to understand the impact of what we mean by 5.5% growth. So basically, even though the growth would be over 5%, it doesn't mean that this growth might be translated into more jobs. That's a problem. So our role is, as ADB, right, as development bank, we try to come up with some projects, we call it interventions, into the growth trajectory of this country or development path of this country, to ensure that those projects and also some reform advice or policy advice we provide to the government of Uzbekistan, the growth generates some employment first, and also they generate change in income of households. This is very essential, and overall this process, we call it inclusive growth, sustainable and inclusive growth. And so our role, once again, is to ensure that Uzbekistan's growth is inclusive and sustainable.
Thank you so much for this interview. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear viewers, for watching this program, and see you in the next episodes.